Basic Navigation Part 2. If you're a bit rusty on your navigation skills, or if you're just beginning, then hopefully you will enjoy this video. Let's go right back to the beginning. Part 2: Wind and Tidal Streams. Ground track wind affects the boat's horizontal movement through the water, but has little effect on the water itself. Tidal streams and currents are movements of water, so they have to be considered separately. Wind is expressed in the direction from which it is blowing from, i.e., a southerly wind is coming from the south. At sea, wind speed is measured by an anemometer, or by its effect on the sea, and referring that to the Beaufort wind scale. Wind speed is measured in a few different ways: knots, meters per second, km per hour, or as a force on the Beaufort scale. If the wind is blowing from directly ahead or astern, the boat's speed will be affected, but it will not affect your course. If the wind is blowing from the side of the boat, it will move the boat sideways from its intended track. The side of the boat facing the wind is called the windward side. The side away from the wind is the leeward side. Leeway. The difference between the course you are steering and the course the boat is traveling through the water is called the leeway angle. The leeway angle is always measured from the vessel's true course. It varies depending on the strength of the wind, the shape of the boat, windage, and the relative wind direction. The closer the relative wind direction is to the boat's beam, and the stronger the wind, the greater the leeway angle will be. The water track is always downwind of the boat's true course. The only way to measure the true effects of the wind is by observation and experience. The boat's wake can provide some clues to the water track. Advertisements report this ad speed through the water. The log measures the boat speed through the water. Log speed does not include the effects of a head-on or following tide. Some logs can also calculate ground speed. Tides are the vertical movement of water. This movement also causes horizontal movement called tidal streams. This is measured in set, the direction the water is moving; rate, the speed; drift, distance over a given time; time x rate H drift. As the tide rises, the inward flow of water is called a flood tide. It is displayed by an arrow with feathers on it. The outward flow is the ebb tide, an arrow with no feathers. Slack water is the interval in between the two streams. Tidal streams are sometimes measured, and there may be a tidal diamond on the chart with further information displayed in the corner of the chart. It will tell you the direction and speed in KTS of the tidal stream. SP stands for spring tide and NP stands for neap tide. For example, you are on a trip that takes you close to a tidal diamond on the chart. You estimate that you are going to be at that location at 12:30 on Friday, 23rd June. You want to find out the direction and rate of tide at that location at that time. Find the time of high water at the port listed on the tidal diamond information. How many hours before or after high tide are you going to be at that location? Read down the table for hours before or after, and then across the row to find the direction and rate at that time. Note that the tidal direction is the direction that it is flowing towards. There are also always true directions. Swells, rivers after rain. Low pressure systems can affect the tides. Tides can also create overfalls, eddies, and rips races, i.e. disturbed water, which can make navigating in these areas difficult. Currents are a continuous flow in one direction and are displayed with a wiggly arrow. Currents are described in the direction they are flowing, so a southerly wind and a northerly current are both heading in the same direction. Imagine you are at an airport. You are walking at a normal pace. This is like your speed through the water. When you get onto a travelator, your speed through the water doesn't change, but your speed across the ground does. You go rapidly faster over the ground, but your actual walking speed hasn't changed. The travelator is like the current. GPS will calculate your speed relative to the ground. The measurement of direction and speed is known as a vector. The plotted course is the distance and direction traveled through the water. The course made good is the direction and distance traveled in relation to the ground. The set and drift is the direction and speed of the tide or current. The three vectors will always form a triangle. God, I wish I'd paid more attention at school. Okay, so here's how you do it. Plot the course on the chart and the actual position at which you would be if there were no drift. Sail in that direction for that allotted period of time. Now plot the actual position you reached at the end of that time period. Join the two lines together to make a triangle. The plotted position and the actual position you got to. This is the direction and distance the vessel has been offset by the stream or current. Position fixing. Always use the method that uses the greatest accuracy. Try combining different methods: radar, navigational lights, depth soundings, bearings, and GPS. Use objects closest to you. Ensure you correctly identify the landmarks you are using. If two or more position lines are obtained at the same time, the boat is located on the intersection of the two lines. To identify a fix, circle it on the chart and put a dot at the fix and the time beside it. An ideal angle of cut is 90°. A poor angle is 30°. A third position line provides an accuracy check. If a cocked hat appears, then the boat is somewhere within the triangle. This could be caused by a plotting error, calculation error, an incorrectly identified landmark, boat movement, instrument errors, or chart errors. If the triangle is large, then the boat should be assumed to be in the most dangerous position and a new fix needs to be obtained ASAP. When sailing during the day, visual bearings are best combined with radar, transits, depth soundings, and vertical or horizontal sextant angles. At night, raising and dipping lights, radar ranges, and depth soundings can be used. Maintain regular intervals between position fixes, i.e., every 10 or 30 minutes. This makes your boat speed calculations easier to do. However, if an opportunity arises for fixing your position, don't pass it up. If you are close to the coast or in poor visibility, position fixes should be more regular. Note your position when anchoring. It's a useful way of checking if you are dragging anchor, and also if you have to slip your anchor and need to come back to retrieve it later. Dead reckoning can be used when offshore, along with celestial navigation. Practice using these skills and then check your GPS to verify your accuracy. Then if you lose your GPS, you've got the skills and tools to navigate without it. Expressing your position. When you are describing your position to someone over the radio, you can express it in latitude and longitude or bearing and distance. When using a bearing, you should express your position to or from that landmark in true. For example, if we were approaching the Littleton Harbor entrance, we would say that we were 2 nautical miles northeast of Godley Head, as opposed to expressing it as a distance and a bearing from your boat, where Godley Head would be 2 nautical miles southwest of your position. Expressing your location in this way means that people can go straight to the landmark on the chart and then plot your position from there, as opposed to trying to do it backwards. Reading chart depths. Chart datum is the level on the chart at which depths are measured from. It is usually the level of the lowest astronomical tide. So generally, depending on the tide, there is usually always more water above the level on the chart. So it is really a worst-case scenario level of water. Overhead obstacles like bridges are measured from a different level, mean high water springs, or the highest astronomical tide. This means that there is usually less water or more clearance available depending on the tide. To work out the height of the tide, click here. Charts provide all sorts of valuable information for sailors. One of the very important things is detailing hazards below the water that you can't necessarily see. They are indicated on the chart as follows. Rocks that are either just below the water line or that cover and uncover with the tide are marked as follows. 1. Dangerous rock depth unknown. Or 4.5 for dangerous rock, 4.5 below chart datum. With spots around the outside and to rock awash at chart datum, so usually just under the water at low tide. 1. A rock which covers and uncovers and dries at 1 above chart datum. So if it's low tide, it's usually protruding 1 above the water, but if there is 2 of tide above it, then it would be below the water. RK3. This rock doesn't cover. It is at a height of 3 above MEHWS, so at least 3 of it shows above the water at high tide. Advertisements. Report this ad. Lighthouses. Lighthouses are described on the chart. Their different flashing signals allow you to identify which light you are looking at. You can use lighthouses to take bearings from, raise or dip them over the horizon, and during the day use them for measuring vertical sextant angles. With GPS being so easy to use these days, it is really easy to not use these traditional navigation techniques. Do you still use paper charts and manually plot your course? Tune in next time when I talk about position lines.